Now, before we move on to the refactoring phase, one more thing. We now have a form to create an article, but what about a form to edit or update an existing article? Let's work on that now. If we again follow that convention, the endpoint should be articles/the ID/edit. All right, let's get started. So we'll go back to our routes/web file, and we'll do it right down here. If we visit an article/an ID/edit, that will hit articles controller add edit. And that action should display a view to edit an existing article. All right, we'll do it right down here. Edit, return a view called articles.edit. All right, let's create that view. So scroll down, edit.blade.php, and let's add our section here. And actually, we can reuse some of this. So let's do this. I'm going to copy all of this, and then later I'll show you some ways to reduce a bit of the duplication when it comes to forms. But for now, we'll paste all of that in. And if we come back to Firefox and give it a refresh, that does work. But actually, real quick, let's bring in that section there. I'll paste that in. There we go. So we want to update the heading, and we also want the default values for these inputs and text areas to be equal to what is currently stored in the database, right? Okay. So let's say update article. Next, we will return to the form tag shortly. But yeah, how do we set the default value for these inputs? Very simple. Let's assume we have an article object. We would just say article and the title. And down here, this would be the article's excerpt. And then finally here is the article's body. Now, of course, at the moment, if we run this, it's not going to work. And that's because we don't have an article object. Okay, that's our next step. Let's return to articles controller. And it sounds like we need to find the article associated with the ID in the URI. So it's very similar to what we did in the show method. One more time, we're going to do it this way, and then there's an even cleaner way to go about it. And I touched upon this a few episodes ago. It's called route model binding, but just stick around until then. Find the article associated with this ID, and then we will pass that article to the view. So a quick note here, you can do it like this if you want, or if you prefer, PHP offers a compact function that will do the exact same thing. Okay, so if I come back to Firefox and I give it a refresh, there we go. We fetch the article from the database that has an ID of 5, and then we inserted the values where necessary. So now, what about updating it? Well, again, let's think about it. We want to follow that RESTful approach. So if we are updating an existing resource, we're going to use the put request type. We'll say route, listen for a put request to articles/article, and that will hit an articles controller at update. So again, notice this is exactly what we reviewed 2 episodes ago. So I'm going to return to articles controller. We're now going to update an existing article. And yet again, we're going to follow the basic approach here. Let's find the article from the database and then update its fields. So we could do kind of this number here. Update the title, excerpt, and body, then save it. And then finally, we will return a redirect. And how about we go back to the articles page? Articles / and then the ID of the article. All right, but this still is not going to work yet. Think about it. Here's our edit form. And when you hit this submit button here, well, it's once again going to submit a post request to /articles. And that's not what we want in this case. We want to send a put request to articles / and then the ID of the article. However, this still isn't going to work, but let me show you. So we'll say changed, and if I hit submit, it didn't work. And in fact, you'll notice it tried to submit a GET request, in fact. Why is that? Okay, well, as it turns out, modern browsers at the time of this recording really only understand GET and POST requests. So if we want to use put or patch or delete, well, we have to tweak things a little bit. So here's what we'll do. We're going to submit a POST request to the server, but then we're going to include a little bit of information to tell Laravel what I really want here is a put request. And we do that through this directive called method. All right, so I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little bit confusing. We're providing POST here because that's the only thing the browser will understand. However, as part of that POST request, we're sending through a hidden input to tell Laravel, I know you received a POST request, But my intention is really to submit a put request. So please respond assuming I submitted a put request. And that's how we get around to that browser issue. So take a look at this. If I come back, refresh, and we view the source here, here is our CSRF token. Again, I'll talk to you more about that in a future episode. But here is that method directive. And that's all you need to know. Once it hits your server, Laravel will detect that automatically and route the request accordingly. Okay, so now I think we're all set to go. So we'll say updated, we'll submit it, and there you go. You've now updated your first article. Let's make another tweak. How about achieving maximum success? Okay, so I will visit the edit link there, and we'll say how to achieve maximum success. We'll submit it, and there you go. We've updated the article. Okay, so the key things to understand here when you're building forms. 1, get in the habit of always including the CSRF directive. The only case where it's not necessary would be if your form submits a GET request, which actually is pretty rare. Next, if you need a put, patch, or delete request, make sure you provide it here, because you can't do it here. This won't work, and that won't work. Stick with post, and then make it clear as a hidden input. All right, that'll do it for this episode. In the next episode, we'll switch back to the controller and talk about how to clean some of this up.